The simulation flickered and died, leaving the combat training room in sudden silence. Cadet Rin's feathers stood on end as she stared at the frozen hologram of the creature that had just virtually torn through her defensive position. Around her, the other cadets looked equally shaken. Even Torvin, whose people were born warriors, had his scaled hands trembling slightly. David Harper dismissed the simulation with a wave and turned to face his class. The human instructor had been teaching tactical combat at the Galactic Defense Academy for 2 years now, and his students still found him difficult to read. Where other species showed clear signs of stress or concern, the human face remained oddly calm. That scenario was rated catastrophic level 9, David said, pulling up statistics on the display. In real combat, survival rate against that threat is approximately 4%. Questions? Lissa raised a webbed hand, her aquatic features pale with worry. Instructor Harper, what species was that creature? I have never seen anything like it in the databases. Apex Slayer, David replied simply. They were nearly wiped out about 300 years ago. Galactic military threw everything at them. Took decades to hunt them down to near extinction. The door to the training room suddenly burst open. Director Pren moved faster than his ancient species normally did, his multiple eyes darting around the room in obvious panic. Behind him, security personnel rushed past in the corridor outside. All classes suspended immediately, Pren announced, his voice crackling with an emotion the translator struggled to convey. Students returned to quarters. Instructors report to command center. Rin felt her heart sink. Academy lockdowns only happened for the most serious threats. Director, what has happened? Pren hesitated, then seemed to decide the students deserved to know. Long-range sensors detected a pack. Apex Slayers. They are heading toward our location. The training room erupted in chaos. Cadets from a dozen different species all started talking at once, their voices rising in fear. Rin had heard stories about Apex Slayers from her grandfather. Entire colonies vanished. Ships torn open like paper. Pack hunters that showed no mercy and could not be reasoned with. How many? Torvin asked, his warrior training overcoming his fear. 5 confirmed signatures, Pren said. Possibly more. They will reach the academy in approximately 6 hours. We are implementing full lockdown protocols, all external ports sealed, defense systems activated, and we pray to whatever gods listen that they pass us by. Rin noticed David had not moved. The human stood still, his expression thoughtful rather than afraid. It seemed wrong somehow. Every other species in the room showed obvious signs of terror, but the human looked like he was solving a puzzle in his head. Instructor Harper, Rin said quietly, why are you not frightened? David glanced at her and something like amusement flickered across his face. What did the director say they look like again? The Apex Slayers? Pren frowned at the question. Is this really the time for academic curiosity, Harper? Humor me. The director's translator voice went flat with recitation. Apex Slayers stand approximately 8 feet tall at the shoulder. Powerful jaws capable of crushing reinforced hull plating. They hunt in coordinated packs of 5 to 12 individuals. Highly intelligent within their groups. Fiercely loyal to pack members. Excellent night vision. Can survive in vacuum for short periods. Their claws can— Stop, David said, holding up a hand. He pulled out his personal data pad and scrolled through something. The other instructors had started filing out, heading to the command center, but David seemed in no hurry to follow. He turned the datapad around, showing an image to the room. Rin leaned closer and saw a creature that looked remarkably similar to the simulation they had just faced. 4 legs, powerful build, sharp teeth visible in an open mouth. But this creature stood in what appeared to be a dwelling, and its mouth was open in what looked almost like happiness. A small human child had arms wrapped around its neck. We call those wolves back on Earth, David said quietly. My family had 3 of them when I was growing up. Well, technically they were wolf-dog hybrids, but close enough. The silence in the room felt heavy enough to crush bone. Torvin found his voice first. You kept those as pets? Those creatures? Not pets exactly, David corrected. Partners, companions. They lived with us, protected our home, played with the children. My dad used to take them hiking in the mountains every weekend. He scrolled through more images. That one was named Scout. That one was Shadow. And the big one was Lady. She was the smartest. Lissa made a sound that the translator rendered as horrified disbelief. But the Apex Slayers killed thousands. They destroyed entire settlements. Because those settlements were built on their breeding grounds, David said. He finally started moving toward the door, gesturing for the stunned cadets to follow. Look, I need to get to the command center. You all should get to your quarters like the director said. Rin spread her wings, blocking his path. Instructor, you cannot simply show us this and leave. Are you saying these apex slayers are like your earth wolves? David considered the question seriously. I am saying that pack hunters follow certain patterns. Loyalty, territory, communication, hierarchy. I know those patterns. I grew up around them. He gently moved past her wing. And I am saying that maybe, just maybe, nobody ever tried to actually talk to them before shooting first. That is insane, Torvin said. But his voice held uncertainty rather than conviction. Probably, David agreed. He paused at the door and looked back at his students. But Earth is a planet covered in apex predators, and humanity survived by learning to understand them. Sometimes we fought them, sometimes we avoided them, and sometimes, when both species were willing, we became family. He left the training room heading toward the command center. The cadet stood frozen, trying to process what they had just learned. Rin found herself thinking about the image of the small human child hugging a creature that could easily tear them apart. About David's calm face when everyone else showed fear. About the fact that humans came from a world so dangerous they had learned to befriend the very things that should have killed them. We are either very fortunate to have a human on our side, she said slowly, or we have greatly underestimated how strange they truly are. Torvin nodded, still staring at the door David had left through. Possibly both. The security briefing room hummed with nervous energy. Captain Yira paced along the back wall, her insectoid legs clicking against the metal floor in an anxious rhythm. Every screen displayed tracking data for the approaching apex slayers, and none of it looked encouraging. David took a seat near the front, watching as various department heads filed in. Director Pren stood at the central console, manipulating holographic displays with practiced efficiency. The old administrator looked like he had aged several years in the past hour. Current projections show the pack will reach our outer perimeter in 4 hours and 17 minutes. Pren announced to the assembled staff. We have activated all standard defensive measures. Hull reinforcement fields at maximum, all airlocks sealed. Emergency escape pods prepped and ready. What about weapons? Someone asked from the back. Captain Yira's mandibles clicked together sharply. Our defensive cannons are designed for asteroid deflection and disabled spacecraft, not for biological threats of this magnitude. Apex slayers can survive direct hits that would destroy most ships. David raised his hand. What do we know about their behavior patterns? Why are they coming here specifically? Pren's multiple eyes swiveled toward him. Harper, they are predators. They come here because we are prey. There is no deeper mystery to solve. Actually, I think there is. David stood and approached the central display. May I? The director gestured impatiently, and David began pulling up different data streams. Look at their trajectory. They are not moving like hunters stalking prey. This is a direct path, yes, but it is also erratic in places. See these course corrections? They are searching for something specific. Searching for the largest concentration of food, Captain Yira said. Us. Maybe, or maybe they are desperate. David zoomed in on one section of the tracking data. How fast are they moving? Pren checked the readings. Faster than previous recorded encounters. Approximately 30% faster. That takes energy, lots of it. Nothing moves that fast unless it has to. David turned to face the room. I think they are refugees, not invaders. Something drove them from their territory. The room filled with skeptical murmurs. David pressed on before anyone could shut him down completely. Let me tell you about Earth, he said, changing the display to show his home planet. My world has thousands of apex predator species. Not one or two. Thousands. Every continent, every ocean, every ecosystem. He pulled up images as he spoke. A massive bear standing on hind legs. A great white shark breaching the water surface. A pride of lions stalking across grassland. A saltwater crocodile's jaws open wide. Each image caused ripples of unease through the assembled staff. Humans survived on a planet where literally everything wanted to eat us or kill us. David continued. We were not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most dangerous. So how did we make it? Technology, someone suggested. Eventually, yes. But before that? David smiled slightly. We learned to understand them. We studied how they hunted, how they communicated, how they thought. And then we did something the rest of the galaxy seems to think is completely insane. He pulled up more images. Humans walking beside wolves. A child riding a horse. A person holding a falcon on their arm. A family relaxing with a dog lying at their feet. We made friends with them, David said simply. The room went very quiet. Captain Yira moved closer to the display, her compound eyes studying the images carefully. You domesticated apex predators? Wolves became dogs over thousands of years, David explained. We fed them, they helped us hunt. We protected each other. Both species became stronger through partnership. He gestured to another image. Horses carried us across distances we could never cover on foot. Cats killed the rodents that ate our stored food. Birds of prey hunted for us. Rin had somehow made her way into the briefing room, likely sneaking in with a group of junior officers. Her voice piped up from the back. But those creatures could have killed you at any moment. Why would you trust them? Because they trusted us first, David said. Predators are not mindless killing machines. They are intelligent, social, and capable of forming bonds beyond their own species. You just have to be willing to try. This is fascinating, Harper, but irrelevant to our current situation, Pren said sharply. We cannot domesticate apex slayers in the next 4 hours. No, but we can try to communicate with them. David returned to the tracking data. Pack hunters follow patterns. If these are refugees, they are looking for food and safety. We can provide both. Captain Yira's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. You want to invite them inside? That is beyond reckless. That is suicidal. I want to talk to them before we start shooting, David corrected. Look at the galactic records. Every encounter with apex slayers has been violent because we shot first and never asked questions. What if they can be reasoned with? They are animals, Pren insisted. So are humans, technically. So is every species in this room if you want to get biological about it. David crossed his arms. 300 years ago, your people hunted apex slayers to near extinction because they were in the way of expansion. You destroyed their breeding grounds, killed their families, and forced survivors into the darkest corners of space. And now you wonder why they might be dangerous? The uncomfortable truth hung in the air. Several staff members shifted nervously. Earth had wolves too. David continued more quietly. We hunted them almost to extinction as well. Killed them because we feared them. Because they competed with us for resources. It took us a very long time to realize what we were losing. He looked directly at Director Pren. Do not make the same mistake twice. Pren was silent for a long moment. Finally he spoke. What exactly are you proposing, Instructor Harper? Let me try to make contact. Peaceful contact. Set up a communication array at the secondary docking bay. If they approach, I will talk to them. And if they attack, then you activate every defensive measure you have, and I will be the only casualty. David's expression was calm, certain. But I do not think they will. Pack hunters protect their own. They understand loyalty. If I can show them we are not a threat, they might show us the same courtesy. Captain Yira looked at Director Pren. This is your decision, Director. But I must note that Harper's psychological profile rates him as highly capable of reading animal behavior. His assessments have been accurate before. Pren cycled through several emotions that the translator could not quite capture. Finally, he nodded slowly. You have until they reach the outer perimeter. If communication fails, we lock everything down and pray. Understood? Understood, David said. As the briefing broke up and people scattered to their assignments, Rin approached David carefully. Instructor, you really believe they are like your Earth wolves? David smiled at her, that strange human expression that could mean so many things. I believe everything wants to survive, Rin. And sometimes survival means finding someone to trust, even if they seem different or scary. He started toward the door. Besides, my family taught me one important lesson about predators. What lesson? The most dangerous thing about them is not their teeth or claws, David said. It is the fact that we never bother to ask what they need before we decide they are monsters. Secondary docking bay 12 felt too quiet. David checked his equipment one more time, making sure the portable translator device was properly calibrated. The food synthesizer sat ready beside him, capable of producing high-protein meals for a variety of biological requirements. His medical kit lay open, various tools arranged within easy reach. No weapons. Rin landed beside him, her wings folding tightly against her body. She had insisted on coming despite David's suggestions that she stay behind. Her people could fly, which meant she could reach the upper observation platforms if things went badly. "The pack is at the outer perimeter," she said, her voice tight with fear. "Captain Yira has weapons locked on the bay entrance from outside. She promises she will only fire if you signal or if they attack." David nodded, keeping his breathing steady and his posture relaxed. Body language mattered more than words when first meeting predators. Tension signaled fear, and fear signaled prey. "Remember what I told you," he said to Rin. "Stay high, do not make sudden movements, and no matter what happens, do not show fear. They can sense it." "How could I possibly not show fear?" Rin whispered. But she launched herself upward, finding a perch on one of the overhead maintenance platforms. The outer hull groaned. Metal shrieked as something incredibly strong began tearing through the reinforced plating that separated the bay from space. David had suggested they simply open the airlock, but Director Pren refused to make it that easy. The Slayers would have to work for entry, giving everyone else time to see their intentions. Apparently they intended to come inside. The breach opened faster than expected. Emergency force fields snapped into place automatically, containing the atmosphere while allowing physical objects to pass through. A massive clawed hand gripped the edge of the torn metal and pulled. The gap widened. Then they came through. 5 Apex Slayers entered the docking bay in a formation that spoke of practiced coordination. The largest one came first, its scarred hide suggesting a long life of survival. Gray fur mixed with darker patches marked what David assumed was the pack leader. Behind it, 4 others spread out in a protective pattern, their eyes scanning the environment for threats. David stayed exactly where he was, sitting on the floor with his legs crossed. Non-threatening, small, approachable. The postures he had learned working with nervous dogs back on Earth. The pack leader approached slowly, its head low and eyes fixed on David. 8 feet of pure muscle and predatory design moved with surprising grace. The other 4 held position, ready to react to any danger their leader might face. David kept his breathing even and avoided direct eye contact. Direct stares meant challenge in almost every predator species he had ever studied. Instead, he watched their body language with his peripheral vision. The pack leader stopped about 10 feet away. Its nostrils flared, taking in David's scent. A low rumble came from its chest, and the translator on David's belt crackled to life. Alone. Weak. Strange. The voice was rough, almost growling, but the words were clear. David felt a surge of hope. They could communicate. Alone, yes. Weak, probably. Strange, definitely. David spoke calmly, giving the translator time to process and transmit. "Welcome to Galactic Defense Academy. You must be tired." The pack leader tilted its head, studying David with what seemed like genuine confusion. "Not afraid." "Why not afraid? Would fear help either of us right now?" The Slayer made a sound that might have been amusement. One of the others, smaller and clearly younger, took a cautious step forward. The pack leader growled a warning and the younger one froze. "We smell food," the leader said. "We hunger." "I can help with that." David slowly reached toward the food synthesizer, moving carefully to show he meant no threat. "What do you usually eat?" "Meat. Raw. Still warm." David programmed the synthesizer for high-protein rations, approximating what the Slayers might need. The machine hummed and produced several large portions of synthesized protein. The smell filled the bay immediately. The pack leader approached the food cautiously, sniffing it carefully. After a moment, it took a bite. Then another. Once the leader ate, the others moved forward quickly, their hunger obvious. David watched them eat, noting injuries on several pack members. Burned patches on hide, a limp in one's gait, cuts that looked partially healed. These were not healthy hunters in their prime. These were survivors running on desperation. While they ate, the youngest one kept glancing at David. After the initial feeding frenzy slowed, it approached him carefully. David remained still, letting it come to him on its own terms. The young Slayer sniffed his hand, then his face. David felt its breath, hot and smelling of meat, but he did not flinch. Slowly, carefully, he raised his hand and let it rest gently on the Slayer's head. The creature went very still. From above, Rin made a small sound of terror. David ran his hand along the Slayer's head, finding the spots behind its ears where earth dogs like to be scratched. The young Slayer leaned into the touch, and that same rumbling sound came from its chest. Not a growl this time, something closer to a purr. Impossible. The pack leader had finished eating and stood watching this interaction with what David could only describe as shock. Our kind and your kind are enemies. Have always been enemies. Only because nobody tried being friends first, David said, still gently petting the young one. You are refugees, are you not? Something destroyed your home. The leader's posture shifted, becoming heavier with what looked like grief. Mining machines came to our breeding grounds. We tried to leave peacefully. They shot first. Many of our pack died. These are all who remain. I am sorry that happened to you. Why sorry? You are not the ones who attacked. Because someone should be sorry. Because what happened to you was wrong. David looked up at the pack leader. You came here looking for food and safety. I can offer both. In exchange for what? Nothing is free. In exchange for a chance, David said. A chance to prove that your species and mine can coexist. That maybe we can help each other. The pack leader moved closer, studying David with intelligent eyes. You said your kind and ours could be friends. Explain this. David pulled up images on his datapad, showing the same pictures he had shared in the briefing room. Humans with wolves and dogs. The pack leader watched intently. Your kind and mine are not so different, David explained. You protect your family. So do we. You hunt together. So do we. You are loyal to your pack. So are we. He gestured to the young one still pressed against his side. Thousands of years ago, humans and wolves learned to trust each other. Both species became stronger for it. The galaxy hunts us, the pack leader said. They have always hunted us. Then it is time someone offered a different option. David stood slowly, and the young slayer moved with him, staying close. Stay here temporarily. Let me help heal your injured. Let us share food. And in return, help me show the galaxy that apex slayers are not monsters. The pack leader was silent for a long moment. Finally it spoke. I am Gray, this is my pack. The young one who has chosen you is Swift. I am David Harper, and I promise you, Gray, nobody will hurt your pack while I am here. Gray looked up at Rin, still perched above, then around at the sealed bay, clearly aware of the weapons trained on them from outside. You risk much for strangers. So do you, David replied. That makes us even. From his communicator, Director Pren's voice crackled through, filled with disbelief. Harper, did you just negotiate sanctuary for apex slayers at my academy? David smiled. Temporary sanctuary, Director. I thought we could all use some practice in making history. Director Pren's office had never felt so crowded. Every available screen showed live feeds from the quarantine bay where Gray's pack currently resided. Security personnel monitored from adjacent rooms. Medical staff analyzed biological data, and at the center of it all, an argument raged. This is completely unacceptable, Harper. Pren gestured at the screens with 3 of his limbs simultaneously. You promised temporary sanctuary to the most dangerous predators in known space without authorization. I promised it to refugees who were starving and desperate, David corrected calmly. There is a difference. Captain Yera stepped between them, her mandibles clicking in agitation. The historical record is very clear. Apex slayers have killed thousands. Entire settlements have been wiped out by packs smaller than the one currently living inside our station. Settlements built on their breeding grounds, David repeated. He had been making this point for the past 30 minutes, but nobody seemed to hear it. Look at the actual incident reports. Every single violent encounter started with galactic expansion into Slayer territory. We invaded their homes and we are surprised they fought back. A holographic figure materialized above the conference table. Representative Morven of the Galactic Wildlife Authority looked as displeased as his species was capable of looking. Instructor Harper, I have reviewed your initial contact report. While I acknowledge your courage, the fact remains that apex slayers are classified as hostile, pre-sentient fauna. They are protected only in the sense that we limit how many can be hunted each year. They use language, David said flatly. They communicate complex ideas. They show familial bonds and emotional responses. That is sentient by any reasonable definition. They use basic vocalizations that might indicate pack coordination, Representative Morven. David pulled up a recording from the docking bay. Gray's voice came through clearly, discussing the destruction of their breeding grounds, expressing grief for lost pack members, asking philosophical questions about trust between species. Does that sound presentient to you? The hologram flickered as Morven considered this. I will admit the linguistic complexity is unexpected. Because nobody ever tried talking to them before shooting first, David said. You classified them as animals because it was easier than admitting you were committing genocide. The room went silent. That word hung heavy in the air, uncomfortable and accusatory. Torvin spoke up from near the door. The reptilian cadet had apparently followed Rin's example and snuck into what was supposed to be a private meeting. My people have stories of apex slayers. We considered them honorable enemies. Fierce, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But they fought to protect their territory, not for conquest. That is warrior behavior, not animal behavior. Director Pren turned his attention to the cadet. Torvin, you should not be here. Neither should Rin or Lissa, but here we all are. Torvin replied, gesturing to where the other cadets stood. We watched the entire first contact. We saw how Gray's pack behaved. They showed restraint, communication, and curiosity. Those are traits of intelligent beings. Lissa moved forward, her aquatic features reflecting the screen light in shifting patterns. I reviewed the medical scans. Their neural structure is highly developed, comparable to several recognized sentient species, and their injuries tell a story of organized retreat under fire, protecting wounded pack members rather than abandoning them. That shows sophisticated social behavior. Representative Morven's hologram shifted through several colors. Even if we were to acknowledge potential sentience, these creatures are too dangerous for standard contact protocols. The risk is simply too high. You said the same thing about humans, David pointed out. When Earth was first contacted, the galactic community wanted to quarantine us indefinitely. Too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous. Sound familiar? Pren made a sound the translator rendered as frustrated acknowledgement. That was different. How? Because we had spaceships? Because we wore clothes? David pulled up comparative data. Humans killed each other by the millions before we reached the stars. We had wars that nearly destroyed our entire species. We created weapons capable of rendering our planet uninhabitable. And yet here I am, teaching at your academy. You gave us a chance to prove we could be civilized. Give them the same chance. And if they prove you wrong? Captain Yira asked. If they turn violent? Then you will have been right and I will have been wrong. But if I am right, you will have gained allies who understand loyalty, cooperation, and survival in hostile environments better than most species in the galaxy. David leaned forward. 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks to work with them under supervised conditions. If it fails, they leave peacefully. Gray already agreed to those terms. Representative Morven was quiet for a long moment, his holographic form cycling through what looked like deep consideration. The precedent this would set is significant. Yes, it is, David agreed. The precedent of choosing understanding over extermination, of admitting we might have been wrong, of giving beings a chance to prove themselves before we label them as monsters. Rin stepped forward, her wings partially spread in a gesture of supplication her species used. Director Pren, we are a defense academy. We train people to protect the galaxy. Should we not also learn to recognize when someone needs defending rather than destroying? Pren looked at each of the cadets in turn, then at his staff, then at the hologram of Representative Morven. Finally, his gaze settled on the screen showing Gray's pack in the quarantine bay. Swift, the young one, was playing with a piece of equipment, figuring out how it worked. The others were grooming each other, clearly exhausted but finally able to rest. You are asking me to potentially destroy my career and risk this entire facility on an experiment, Pren said quietly. I am asking you to do the right thing, David replied. Even when it is difficult. The silence stretched. Captain Yira's mandibles clicked nervously. Representative Morven's hologram flickered with uncertainty. 2 weeks, Pren finally said, but with conditions. Round-the-clock monitoring. Strict containment protocols. At the first sign of genuine aggression, we end the experiment immediately. Agreed, David said. Representative Morven's hologram pulsed. I will need to report this to the full Galactic Council. This is highly irregular. Everything worth doing usually is, David said. If this succeeds, Morven continued slowly, it would require complete reclassification of apex slayers as a sentient species, full protection under galactic law, formal recognition and rights. That is exactly what I am hoping for. And if it fails, Harper, you will likely be removed from your position. The Academy will face severe criticism, and I will have significant political problems to deal with. Morven paused. However, your point about linguistic evidence is compelling. And if we are wrong about this, the moral implications are indeed troubling. So you will support the trial period? David asked. The hologram seemed to nod, though the gesture was approximate. I will allow it. But Harper, you are betting your career on the idea that predators can become partners. David smiled, that strange human expression. Representative, I am from a planet where that happened thousands of times. I would not bet on it if I did not know it could work. After Morven's hologram disappeared and the various officials began filing out, still grumbling about procedures and protocols, Rin approached David. Why do you care so much about them? She asked quietly. They are not your species. This is not your fight. David looked at the screens showing Gray's pack. Swift had fallen asleep leaning against Gray, the pack leader's tail wrapped protectively around the younger slayer. When I was 7, I found a wolf pup in the woods behind my house, David said. She was injured, abandoned, starving. My parents said we should leave her because wolves were dangerous. But I asked them to give her a chance. We nursed her back to health. She became part of our family. That was Scout. From the pictures? That was Scout. David smiled at the memory. She lived with us for 12 years. Protected my little sister from a bear once. Slept at the foot of my bed every night. And when she died, I realized something important. What? That the most valuable things in life are the ones you have to risk something to gain. David started toward the door. Gray's pack deserves that same chance I gave Scout. The chance to be seen as more than just teeth and claws. The chance to be family. Torvin, still lingering near the doorway, spoke up. The human concept of family is very strange. Maybe, David agreed. But it is also one of our greatest strengths. 7 days into the trial period, and the modified cargo bay had transformed into something resembling a proper habitat. David stood at the entrance, watching Gray's pack move through their daily routine with growing satisfaction. Swift bounded over immediately, the young slayer having bonded so strongly with David that separation seemed to cause genuine distress. The feeling was mutual. David ran his hand along Swift's head, feeling the powerful muscles beneath the hide, and marveled at how quickly trust could develop when both parties wanted it to work. Morning training session? Gray approached more slowly, moving with the deliberate grace of a leader confident in their authority. Morning training, David confirmed. Today I want to work on neutral greeting behaviors with the cadets. Over the past week, David had established a structured routine. Morning feeding. Medical checks. Enrichment activities to keep the pack mentally stimulated. And gradually, carefully, integration exercises with Academy personnel who volunteered to participate. Rin landed beside David, her confidence around the slayers having grown considerably. Torvin and Lissa are waiting in the training area. Several other cadets asked to observe today. Good. The more people who see this working, the better. David gestured for Gray to follow. Remember, calm approaches only. If anyone shows fear, we back off and try again later. The pack followed David through the corridors toward one of the large training areas. Other Academy personnel pressed themselves against walls as the group passed, still nervous but no longer panicking. Progress came in small steps. Inside the training room, Torvin stood ready with Lissa beside him. Behind them, perhaps 20 cadets from various species watched from behind a transparent barrier. All volunteers who wanted to understand what David was trying to accomplish. All right, David began. Predator body language basics. When a slayer approaches you, they are reading everything you do. Torvin, show me a fear response. The reptilian cadet tensed his body, made himself smaller, and avoided eye contact while backing away. Exactly what not to do, David said. That signals prey behavior. Now show me confidence without aggression. Torvin straightened, relaxed his posture, and stood his ground while maintaining a neutral expression. Not challenging, not fleeing, simply present better. Gray, approach Torvin, please. Slowly. Gray moved forward with careful steps, giving Torvin time to adjust to the presence of an apex predator less than 3 feet away. The slayer stopped just before reaching touching distance and made a low rumbling sound. He says you stand well, David translated, though the universal translator device was also working. Like a warrior, not prey. Gray's people respect that. Torvin slowly extended a clawed hand. Gray sniffed it carefully, then pressed his head against Torvin's palm. The gesture was deliberate, a sign of acceptance. Around the room, cadets gasped. Contact established, David said with satisfaction. Lissa, you are next. The aquatic cadet approached more hesitantly, her natural caution warring with scientific curiosity. One of the other pack members, a slayer David had started calling Dash, moved forward to meet her. "Remember your breathing," David coached. "Dash can sense your heartbeat, smell your stress hormones. Try to stay calm." Lissa managed a reasonably steady approach. Dash circled her once, examining the strange being that moved so differently from anything in the Slayer's experience. Then Dash did something unexpected. The Slayer laid down, reducing her height to make herself less threatening. "Well, that is new," David said, genuinely surprised. Dash just made herself vulnerable to put Lissa at ease. That shows incredible social intelligence. Lissa knelt carefully beside Dash, her webbed hands hovering uncertainly. "May I?" Dash rumbled approval, and Lissa gently touched the Slayer's side. "The musculature is fascinating. So much power, but such fine control." "They have to have fine control," David explained. "Pack coordination requires precision. They are not mindless killing machines. They are highly skilled cooperative hunters." Swift, never content to be left out, trotted over to the observation barrier where the other cadets watched. The young Slayer pressed against the transparent wall, clearly curious about all these new individuals. One cadet, braver than the others, pressed a hand against the barrier from the other side. Swift mimicked the gesture, placing a massive paw against the same spot. The size difference was startling, but the intention was clear. Connection, curiosity, interest. "They want to understand us as much as we want to understand them," Rin observed, landing near David. "Why did nobody see this before?" "Because seeing it requires stopping long enough to look," David said. "The galaxy has been shooting Slayers on sight for 300 years. Nobody took the time to simply observe." Gray approached David and settled beside him, the pack leader having taken to staying close during these sessions. "Your young ones learn quickly." "So do yours," David replied. "Swift has figured out how to operate 3 different types of doors and learned 15 hand signals. Swift is clever. Too clever sometimes. Gets into trouble." Gray's rumbling voice held what David recognized as parental affection. "But Swift will be strong leader someday. Learning from you teaches Swift that strength comes in many forms." The training session continued for another hour. By the end, every cadet who volunteered had successfully made peaceful contact with at least one pack member. More importantly, the Slayers seemed genuinely pleased by the interactions, their body language relaxed and their vocalizations carrying positive tones. As they returned to the habitat, David noticed Director Pren observing from one of the monitoring stations. The old administrator had been watching these sessions daily, though he rarely commented. Later that afternoon, David received a summons to Pren's office. He expected more bureaucratic concerns, more warnings about risk and responsibility. Instead, he found Pren reviewing medical data on the pack. "The injuries are healing well," Pren said without preamble. "Lissa's treatment protocols are highly effective. She is a talented medic," David agreed. "The pack trusts her now. That is what concerns me." Pren turned to face David directly. "They trust. They learn. They cooperate. Every metric we have confirms sentience. Do you understand what this means? It means we were wrong about them. It means we need to make it right. It means," Pren continued, "that for 300 years the galactic community has been systematically eliminating a sentient species. That our expansion policy has been genocide, not wildlife management. The political implications are catastrophic." David sat down slowly. "You want to bury this? Pretend it never happened?" "No," Pren's voice was firm. "I want to document everything. I want undeniable proof. Because when this trial period ends and Representative Morvan makes his report, there will be species who refuse to accept the findings. They will claim manipulation, trickery, human interference. We need evidence so comprehensive that denial becomes impossible." "You are saying you believe me now?" "I am saying I watched Swift teach another pack member how to use the water dispenser this morning. I am saying I heard Gray compose what can only be described as poetry about lost homelands. I am saying I saw Dash deliberately injure herself less severely to take a blow meant for a younger pack member during that mining attack." Pren's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. "I am saying that we have committed a grave wrong, and I intend to spend the rest of my career trying to fix it." David felt something tight in his chest loosen. "Thank you, Director. Do not thank me yet. The second week will be harder. Representative Morvan is bringing observers. Some will want this to succeed. Others will be looking for any excuse to shut it down." Pren pulled up security footage. "And there is something else. We detected an unauthorized vessel near our sector. It departed before we could identify it, but the signature matches known poacher ships. Poachers? Why would they come here? Apex slayers are valuable, Harper. Living specimens even more so. The black market would pay enormous amounts for Gray's pack. Pren met David's eyes. We may have bigger problems than galactic politics coming our way. David thought of Swift's trusting nature, of Gray's careful leadership, of the pack that had chosen to believe in the possibility of peace. Then we better be ready to protect them. Indeed. Pren almost smiled, as close as his species came to the expression. It seems your human habit of adopting dangerous creatures has become contagious. David returned to the habitat to find Swift waiting by the door, clearly having sensed David's absence and grown concerned. The young slayer pressed close, and David wrapped an arm around the powerful neck. Do not worry, he said softly. I am not going to let anything happen to you or your pack. That is a promise. Above them, Rin watched from her usual perch. Humans and their need to protect things. It is very strange. Maybe, David agreed, but it is also why we survive. The alarm shattered the quiet of David's quarters at what his body insisted was far too early in the morning. He rolled out of bed instantly, years of emergency drills overriding the desire for more sleep. Swift, who had taken to sleeping outside David's door, was already on alert, sensing danger before the alarm even sounded. David's communicator crackled to life. Captain Yira's voice came through tense and clipped. Harper, get to command center immediately. We have a situation. The command center was chaos when David arrived. Director Pren stood at the central console, multiple limbs working different controls simultaneously. Screen showed a ship approaching at high speed, its weapons systems active. Poachers, Captain Yira reported. They ignored all hailing frequencies and began cutting through our outer hull 3 minutes ago. They are heading directly for the section where Gray's pack is housed. How many? Scans show approximately 20 armed individuals. Professional mercenaries by their equipment signatures. Captain Yira's mandibles clicked in agitation. We are a research and training facility, Harper. Our defensive capabilities are minimal. We called for support, but the nearest military vessel is 4 hours away. David ran toward the habitat, his mind racing through options. Swift bounded alongside him, the young slayer's protective instincts fully engaged. Other pack members were already agitated when they arrived, sensing the threat through whatever combination of senses made them such effective survivors. Gray met David at the entrance. Danger comes. We smell explosives. Weapons designed to stun, not kill. They want to capture you, David said. Sell you on the black market. Living apex slayers are worth a fortune to collectors and fighting rings. The pack formed a protective circle, ready to defend themselves. David could see the shift in their body language. These were no longer the exhausted refugees who had arrived a week ago. These were apex predators preparing for war. We fight, Gray stated simply. Against armed mercenaries, they will have weapons specifically designed to take down creatures like you. Then we die fighting rather than in cages. Gray's eyes met David's. This is pack law. David's communicator buzzed. Rin's voice came through urgently. David, the poachers breached secondary corridor 7. They are moving fast. Security is trying to slow them down, but we are not equipped for this kind of assault. A new voice cut in. Torvin. Instructor Harper, we want to help. The cadets. We trained for combat scenarios. Let us actually use that training. Negative, Captain Yira responded. You are students, not soldiers. With respect, Captain, we are warriors. Some of us, at least. Torvin's voice held the formal challenge tone of his people. And we will not hide while others fight to protect those under Academy sanctuary. David looked at Gray, at Swift pressed close to his side, at the other pack members ready to defend their family with everything they had. An idea formed, reckless and dangerous and possibly brilliant. Gray, what if you did not have to fight them head on? What if you could use your natural advantages? Explain. This is your environment. Tight corridors, poor lighting, unfamiliar territory for them. You know pack tactics. They know how to shoot at targets. David pulled up a station map on his datapad. What if we work together? Your pack, the cadets, and Academy security. Coordinated defense. Gray's rumble sounded almost like a laugh. You wish to hunt the hunters? I wish to protect this pack. Whatever that takes. The decision happened faster than David expected. Gray communicated something to the pack in their own language. something the translator did not catch. But the response was clear. They would fight, but they would fight smart. David opened a channel to Command Center. Director Pren, I need authorization to coordinate a defensive response using all available assets. Define all available assets. Harper, Gray's pack, volunteer cadets, and security personnel working as a unified force. Silence. Then, you want to use Apex Slayers as security forces? I want to use intelligent beings who are very good at their natural skill set to defend their home and ours. David watched Swift's eager stance. They are not weapons, Director. They are partners. Let them prove it. Another pause. Authorization granted. Captain Yira will coordinate with you. Try not to get everyone killed. The next 20 minutes happened in a blur of organized chaos. Rin used her flight to provide aerial reconnaissance. Torven and a group of cadets from warrior species established defensive choke points. Lissa set up emergency medical stations, and Gray's pack moved through the station like water flowing through cracks. Silent and devastating. The poachers never stood a chance against an enemy they did not understand. David watched through security feeds as Dash and another pack member flanked a group of mercenaries, not attacking but herding them toward where Torven's cadets waited. Swift used speed and agility to disable weapons, moving too fast for the mercenaries to track. Gray coordinated everything with the kind of tactical brilliance that only came from thousands of generations of cooperative hunting. When the poacher, Captain, finally realized his team was being systematically outmaneuvered, he tried to retreat to his ship. He found his path blocked by David, standing calmly in the corridor with Swift at his side. You're making a mistake, the poacher snarled through his helmet. Those creatures are worth millions. Those people are not for sale. David corrected the man's language deliberately. And you just proved exactly why the galaxy needs to change how it thinks about them. Academy security, finally organized and reinforced, arrived to take the poachers into custody. Not a single Academy resident was seriously injured. The poachers, on the other hand, would need significant medical attention. Gray's pack had been highly efficient. 3 days later, Representative Morven stood in person at the Academy, not just as a hologram. He had witnessed the entire incident through security feeds. Around him, observers from a dozen species had gathered to evaluate the trial period results. The evidence is conclusive, Morven announced formally. Apex Slayers demonstrate advanced cognitive ability, complex communication, social organization, and capacity for cooperation with other sentient species. Effective immediately, they are reclassified as sentient beings with full protection under galactic law. Gray's pack, groomed and formal for the occasion, stood beside David. Swift pressed close as always, now recognized not as a dangerous animal but as a young person still learning about the wider universe. Furthermore, Morven continued, the Galactic Council has approved a proposal. This academy will establish a new program for integration specialists, beings who can help species previously classified as hostile or dangerous find peaceful contact with the galactic community. Director Pren stepped forward. We are honored to host such a program, and I believe we have the perfect candidates to lead it. He gestured to Gray's pack and to David. Gray's pack will serve as ambassadors and teachers, helping others understand their species and working to locate other Slayer packs who might benefit from Sanctuary. Instructor Harper will continue his role as liaison and integration specialist. Gray rumbled approval. We accept, on one condition, which is that the breeding grounds stolen from our people are returned and protected. That the next generation of Slayers can be born free, not hunted. Morven nodded solemnly. Agreed. The Galactic Council will begin identifying former Slayer territories and establishing protected reserves. It is the least we can do after 300 years of injustice. Weeks later, David stood in his classroom with a new group of cadets. Swift dozed at his feet, having claimed that spot as permanent territory. On the screens behind him, images of Earth rotated slowly. Today we begin a course on interspecies relations, David said to the attentive students. We will discuss why fear of difference prevents us from finding the incredible, why assumptions about what is dangerous or primitive or hostile often tell us more about ourselves than about others. He pulled up an image of Earth, green and blue and beautiful. Let me tell you about a planet covered in apex predators, a world so dangerous that simply surviving to adulthood was an accomplishment, And let me tell you about what happened when one particular species decided that instead of just fighting or running, they would try to understand. Gray entered through the back of the classroom, moving to stand beside David. The pack leader had taken to guest teaching, offering perspective that only someone who lived the experience could provide. And let me tell you, Gray added, his voice carrying through the translator with increasing clarity as he practiced standard galactic speech about what happens when predators choose family over fear, when pack bonds extend beyond species, when trust becomes stronger than instinct. David looked at his students, at Gray, at Swift sleeping peacefully in a room full of beings from a dozen different worlds, because that is not just a story about humans and wolves. That is not just about apex slayers and academy cadets. That is the story of every time anyone chose to see a person where others only saw a monster. Rin, now a teaching assistant, landed beside the podium. And sometimes, she added softly, the monsters turn out to be the ones who never bothered to ask questions before shooting. Outside the windows, stars stretched across the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, other Slayer packs were being located, offered sanctuary, given the chance to rejoin galactic civilization not as hunted animals, but as recognized people. The work would take years, maybe decades. The prejudices ran deep, but it had started. One human with a memory of a wolf pup, one pack of desperate refugees, one choice to try understanding instead of violence. Sometimes that was all it took. Swift woke from sleep, yawned widely showing impressive teeth, and rested a heavy head on David's foot. In any other context, the gesture would be threatening. Here, in this room, it was simply what it was. Family.